AITA for opening the safe deposit box my sister tried to claim after mocking me for being adopted? I'm Ruby, 31, and I've spent most of my life trying not to make my adoption the center of every disagreement in our family. Arthur and Helen were my parents. There was never an asterisk attached to that in our home. They packed my lunches, sat through school concerts where I played the wrong notes, saved every messy handmade card I gave them, and called me every Sunday after I moved out. Sometimes the call lasted 10 minutes and consisted mostly of my mother asking if I had eaten anything besides cereal. Their biological daughter, Celeste, saw it differently. Celeste was 7 years older than me, and had a way of making a cruel statement sound like a harmless clarification. At family gatherings, she would introduce me by saying, "This is Ruby, my parents' adopted daughter," even when no one had asked. If I brought Mom flowers, Celeste would smile and say, "It's sweet that you try so hard." If Dad praised something I had done, she would wait until we were alone and say, "You know they overcompensate because they feel responsible for you." For years, I told myself she was insecure, not cruel. That was easier to live with. My parents never encouraged it. Dad would correct her when he heard her. "Ruby is your sister," he said once after Celeste introduced me as the adopted one at a holiday dinner. Celeste had shrugged. "I didn't say she wasn't." Mom's face tightened, but she let it go because my Aunt Joanne had already started passing the potatoes with the frantic energy of someone trying to stop an argument by keeping everyone's mouths full. That was how our family handled Celeste. We redirected. We softened. We told ourselves she was blunt, emotional, protective, stressed, or misunderstood. And because my parents loved me openly, I thought I could afford to ignore her. When their health declined, I stopped ignoring a lot of things. Dad's heart problems became harder to manage, and Mom developed complications from an illness she had been dealing with quietly for years. Their kitchen counter turned into a small pharmacy. I used colored labels on the medication bottles and left handwritten instructions on the refrigerator. I drove them to appointments when I could, brought groceries, changed sheets, and sat at the table with Mom while Dad slept in his recliner. I wasn't their only caregiver. Celeste helped too, especially with paperwork and insurance calls. She lived closer and liked reminding everyone of that fact. What bothered me was that she treated care like a competition she had already won. If I arrived with groceries, she would say, "You should have checked with me first." If I took Dad to an appointment, she would text Joanne that I had shown up unexpectedly. If Mom asked me to stay for dinner, Celeste would call later and ask what we had discussed, as though I had attended a secret board meeting. During those final months, relatives started making comments that confused me. "It's good you're making time now," one cousin said at a family lunch. "Now?" I asked. He looked uncomfortable. "Celeste said you've been busy." I could have corrected him. I had texts confirming appointments, grocery receipts, and messages from Mom asking me to come over. But my parents were exhausted, and I refused to turn their last months into a campaign proving which daughter had been more devoted. "I'm not keeping score," I told Celeste once when she accused me of trying to make her look bad. "You always say that when you're losing," she replied. Dad died first. Mom followed less than 3 months later. Those months blurred together in a way grief often does. I remember the smell of hospital soap, the sound of Dad's television playing to an empty recliner, and Mom's recipe box sitting on the kitchen counter because she had been trying to organize it before she got too weak. I also remember Celeste becoming very efficient. She handled calls with the funeral home. She collected documents. She decided which photographs would go on the memorial boards. She spoke to people in a low, controlled voice and used phrases like, "What Mom would have wanted," with such confidence that no one challenged her. The memorial reception was held at my parents' house. There were deli trays on the dining table, paper plates bending under potato salad, half-wilted flowers covering every open surface, and framed photographs of my parents smiling at people who had spent the entire afternoon crying. By evening, most guests had left. Only a handful of relatives remained, including Joanne, Celeste's husband Owen, and 2 cousins who were helping stack chairs. I was collecting empty cups from the living room when Celeste said, "Before everyone goes, we should settle expectations." The sentence made me stop. She stood near the fireplace with one hand resting on the mantel. Owen was in the hallway behind her, silent, watching. Joanne looked alarmed. "Tonight." It doesn't need to be a whole thing, Celeste said. I just don't want confusion later. I set the cups down. Confusion about what? The house. Mom and Dad wanted it kept in the family, so Owen and I will stay here for now. We'll protect it and manage everything. I stared at her. What does the will say? Her expression changed by half an inch. That was enough. Mom and Dad didn't want legal drama, she said. That wasn't my question. Some things don't need paperwork when everyone knows what's right. I looked at Joanne. She dropped her eyes. I asked, has probate been opened? Celeste let out a slow breath, as though I were embarrassing myself. Ruby, today is not the day to start interrogating people. You brought up the estate. I brought up the house because someone had to. Then she picked up an old cream-colored envelope from the side table and held it out to me. My first name was written across the front in my mother's handwriting. For 1 second I thought Celeste was giving me a letter. I took it. Inside were $1,200 bills and a small brass key. I looked up. What is this? Your share. The room went completely quiet. I thought I had misunderstood. My share of what? Everything. Joanne whispered. Celeste. But Celeste kept her eyes on me. You were loved, Ruby, she said. No one is denying that. But you were not blood. $1,200 is generous considering the circumstances. I felt something hot move through my chest, but my hand stayed steady. What circumstances? She gave me a patient smile. Don't do this. You just handed me cash at our parents' memorial and called it my adopted share. I didn't call it that. You didn't have to. Owen stepped forward. Everyone's tired. I looked at him. Did you know she was going to do this? He glanced at Celeste before answering. We're trying to avoid a long fight. Joanne came closer and lowered her voice. Please, Ruby. Not today. I turned to her. Then why is she doing this today? No one answered. Celeste folded her arms. Mom and Dad knew who stayed. They knew who was really theirs. That was the line that almost broke my control. Almost. I wanted to throw the money at her. I wanted to tear open every cabinet in the house until I found the will. I wanted to make her explain herself in front of the framed photograph of Dad, holding me on my first day of middle school. Instead, I put the bills and key back into the envelope. I said, I'm not agreeing to anything. Celeste's smile returned. Take whatever time you need. I walked out with the envelope in my hand because I was too tired to fight on the worst day of my life. The next morning I went back to collect 3 things. A framed photograph from a family vacation, Mom's recipe cards, and a small box of birthday letters Dad had kept in the bottom drawer of his desk. My key no longer worked. First I assumed I was using the wrong one. I tried again, pulled the door toward me, then pushed it in. The new lock was bright and clean against the old wood. I called Celeste. She didn't answer. I texted, Did you change the locks? Her reply came less than a minute later. Yes. You don't have a reason to enter the house anymore. I stared at the message until the words blurred. I wrote, I'm here for Mom's recipe cards and the letters Dad saved for me. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then returned. I'll see what belongs to you. I took a screenshot. That afternoon, Owen left me a voicemail. Hey Ruby, Celeste is grieving and the house needs to be secure. Don't make this harder than it has to be. We'll get you anything that's clearly personal. Just respect the boundaries right now. He sounded calm and reasonable. That made it worse. I saved the voicemail. Over the next several weeks I heard things through relatives. Celeste and Owen were sorting the house. Celeste had given away some furniture. Owen had rented a storage unit. A set of Dad's old tools had been sold to someone from his former workplace. When I asked Celeste for information about the will, she replied, You accepted what Mom and Dad left you. I wrote back, I accepted an envelope. I did not sign anything. She responded, You took the money and left. The cash was still in the envelope. I didn't spend $1. I also didn't hire a lawyer. I know some people have judged me for that and I understand why. I had evidence that something was wrong. I had the changed locks, the messages, the voicemail, and Celeste's refusal to show me any documents. But grief had made me uncertain in ways I didn't recognize at the time. Celeste's version of our family had always been that I was included because our parents were kind, not because I truly belonged. After they died, there was no one left to contradict her with the authority I trusted most. I started wondering if fighting would prove her point. Maybe I would look greedy. Maybe my parents really had left Celeste the house because she was their biological daughter. Maybe the $1,200 was humiliating but accurate. Maybe asking for more would turn every memory I had of them into a dispute over money. Joanne called me 2 weeks after the locks were changed. "Your sister says you're threatening legal action," she said. "I haven't threatened anything. She says you keep demanding the house. I asked to see the will." Joanne sighed. "I'm just asking you to keep the peace." "Peace for whom?" "Ruby, everyone is grieving. So am I." "I know. But Celeste handled so much at the end." I closed my eyes. "I was there too." "I didn't say you weren't." It was the same kind of sentence Celeste always used. Technically true. Completely dishonest. I said, "I'm not asking for the house. I'm asking what our parents actually decided." Joanne was quiet for a moment. "Maybe let some time pass." So I did. The envelope went into the back of a desk drawer. Months became a year. Then another. Celeste's story hardened into family history. She had cared for our parents. She had stayed in the house to protect it. I had taken my money and disappeared. Every rumor had the same shape. Celeste was loyal and I was convenient. I stopped attending large family gatherings because someone always found a way to mention the estate without asking me what had happened. A cousin once said, "At least Celeste gave you something," as though she had personally tipped me after dinner. I built a quieter life. I worked, paid my bills, kept my circle small, and learned not to open family group messages after 10 p.m. I did not forgive Celeste. I simply stopped expecting the truth to matter. For years after the memorial, I was cleaning out old files when the envelope slipped from behind a stack of tax papers and landed on the floor. The bills were still inside, crisp and untouched. The brass key rolled under my chair. I picked it up and looked at it properly for the first time. It was heavier than a house key. Tiny numbers were engraved near the top, and beneath the scratches, I could see a faint bank stamp. I sat there for several minutes. Celeste had acted as though the key were a meaningless trinket. I had assumed it opened an old cabinet or a lockbox that no longer existed. But banks don't stamp filing cabinet keys. For the first time in 4 years, I wondered if Celeste had made a mistake. The next morning, I brought the key and the envelope to the bank whose mark was stamped into the metal. A gray-haired employee named Harold met me at a desk near the back. He wore reading glasses low on his nose and handled the key with both hands. "I need to verify your identification before I say anything else," he told me. I gave him my driver's license and answered several questions. He checked my signature, typed for a while, then excused himself. When he returned, his expression was different. "This box is not inactive," he said. "It has restricted authorization." "What does that mean?" "It was opened jointly by Arthur and Helen. Their instructions designate you as the sole authorized person after both account holders' deaths." I thought I had misheard him. "Only me?" "Yes." "What about their estate executor?" "The authorization is specific. Access requires your identification and signature." I placed my hand flat on the desk because my fingers had started trembling. Harold looked back at his screen. "There are also notes showing prior denied access requests." My throat tightened. "From who?" "I can't disclose details casually. There is a process for requesting the access history. But I can tell you someone presented documents and attempted access more than once. The requests were denied because that individual was not authorized." "How many times?" He paused. "More than one." I thought of Celeste putting the key into my envelope with $1,200. I thought of her telling me I had no reason to enter the house anymore. "Can I open the box today?" "Yes," he said. "Once we complete the verification." The safe deposit room was smaller than I expected. No dramatic vault doors, no cinematic rows of gold. Just polished metal boxes, a private viewing room, and the quiet hum of air conditioning. Harold used a bank key. I used the brass key. The lock turned. Inside the box were 2 thick folders, a sealed letter, several bank statements, a notarized packet, a home insurance envelope, and a small bundle of old birthday cards tied with blue ribbon. My name was written on almost everything. I sat at the little table and opened the letter first. Ruby. If you are reading this, then both of us are gone, and there is a good chance someone has made you feel that you need permission to grieve us as our daughter. You do not. We chose you. Not once, not on paper, but every day. We know you dislike conflict. We also know that your kindness can turn into silence when you are hurt. Please do not let anyone use that silence to rewrite what we decided or who you are to us. The rest of the letter blurred. I covered my mouth with one hand and cried in that little bank room, but not because of the money. For 4 years, I had carried a private fear that my parents had agreed with Celeste in the end, that maybe every Sunday call, every birthday letter, every family photograph had been real emotionally but meaningless when it came time to declare who belonged. The letter destroyed that fear in 3 paragraphs. The documents underneath it destroyed everything else Celeste had told me. My parents had created a separate trust for me. There were bank statements tied to the trust account, a signed trust instrument, copies of instructions to their estate attorney, and notarized letters explaining why the arrangement existed. They had not created it because they loved me less. They created it because they believed I would be pressured into accepting less. One note in Dad's handwriting said, "Ruby will avoid conflict if she thinks conflict dishonors us. Make clear that enforcing this is not disrespect." I had to stop reading after that. The home insurance envelope contained a handwritten list of valuable property in the house. Mom's jewelry, Dad's tools, several pieces of antique furniture, a coin collection, and family items assigned to each daughter. Helen's recipe cards and the box of birthday letters were listed for me specifically. There was also a copy of an earlier document that made my stomach turn. About a year before Mom died, Celeste had brought her a proposed revision to the estate plan. The revision would have shifted most assets to Celeste and named her as the only daughter receiving family property. Mom had apparently signed nothing. Dad discovered the paperwork, contacted their attorney, and documented what happened. His note said Celeste had described the change as simplifying things, while Mom was weak and medicated. Another letter warned that Celeste might rely on family pressure, urgency, or claims that Ruby has already agreed. My parents had predicted the memorial room conversation almost word for word. I left the bank with copies, the original envelope, and a list of steps Harold gave me for requesting the access records. The original trust documents and notarized letters were secured according to the bank's procedure until I could coordinate with counsel. I did not call Celeste. I did not send Joanne a picture of the letter. I did not post anything in the family group chat. That was the moment my grief turned into strategy. I photographed the envelope from every angle. I photographed the cash in place, including the serial numbers. I saved the original text from Celeste, exported Owen's voicemail, and backed everything up. Then I searched for a probate attorney. Claire was 45, calm, precise, and completely unimpressed by family drama. At our first meeting, she read the trust documents, the notarized letter, the estate instructions, and the screenshots without interrupting. When she finished, she looked at me and said, "Do not warn your sister. Do not argue with her. Preserve everything. Can anything even be done after 4 years? That depends on what was filed, whether the estate was closed, what assets were concealed, and what representations were made to the court. But this is not simply a disagreement about what your parents wanted. What is it? The issue is what your sister represented to the court, what she controlled, and whether she failed to account for estate property. The trust is another matter. If these documents are valid, she had no authority over those assets." Claire requested the probate file. When it arrived, she called me into her office. The file contained forms listing heirs, notices, an estate inventory, distribution claims, and statements signed by Celeste in her role as executor. My name appeared in 2 places. In one filing, Celeste said I could not be located despite reasonable efforts. In another, she represented that I had accepted a personal distribution and made no further claim. Claire placed the paper beside a screenshot of the text Celeste had sent me the morning after the memorial. "You don't have a reason to enter the house anymore. Same phone number. Same date range. Same sister who supposedly could not locate me. She didn't lose me, I said. She wrote me out. Claire nodded. That appears to be the argument. The access records from the bank made it worse. Celeste had attempted to access the safe deposit box 3 times. Once shortly after Dad died, once after Mom died, and once almost a year later. She had presented executor documents, but the bank denied her because the box agreement named me as the only successor authorized to enter. She knew the box existed. She knew she could not open it. And somehow, while emptying drawers at my parents' house, she had found the key and placed it in the envelope she gave me. I could only guess what she thought it opened. Maybe she assumed the bank would let her in later. Maybe she thought the box was empty. Maybe she believed I would throw the envelope away out of humiliation. Her arrogance had handed me the one thing she could not use. Claire filed a petition seeking to reopen or review the estate proceedings based on newly discovered documents and alleged misrepresentations. She demanded a full accounting, asked the court to restrict further estate activity, and requested that Celeste be suspended pending review. She also sent a preservation letter by certified mail requiring Celeste and Owen to retain receipts, messages, sale records, storage records, photographs, and documents related to anything removed from my parents' house. 2 days after the letter was delivered, Celeste texted me for the first time in more than a year. "You are a charity case with a lawyer. Congratulations." I took a screenshot and sent it to Claire. Her reply was immediate. "Do not respond." A second message arrived from Celeste. "Mom and Dad would be disgusted." I forwarded that too. Claire wrote, "Preserve it." For once I let Celeste talk. Every insult became evidence. Owen tried a different approach. He called from an unfamiliar number. I let it go to voicemail. "Ruby, this has gotten out of hand. There's no reason to drag everyone through court. The locks were for security." Celeste was overwhelmed. "I was helping my wife. Nobody was trying to hurt you. Call me back, and we can resolve this privately." Claire listened to the recording. "He wants you in a conversation that isn't documented," she said. "I'm not calling him." Good. The first round of document requests produced a locksmith receipt in Owen's name, dated the morning after the memorial. It also produced payments for a storage unit opened that same week. The inventory Celeste had filed with the court did not list several items from my parents' insurance records. Dad's coin collection was missing. 2 antique pieces were missing. His tools were valued at almost nothing, even though messages showed Owen discussing a sale. One message between Owen and Celeste read, "Move the boxes before Ruby starts asking." Owen later claimed the message referred to donations. The storage records did not support that explanation. As the probate review approached, Celeste did what she had always done when facts became uncomfortable. She gathered an audience. "Joanne called me on a Thursday evening. Celeste wants the family to meet Sunday," she said. "Why?" "She says this needs to be resolved before it gets worse. It's already in court. She wants everyone to talk like a family." I almost laughed. "Will Claire be there?" I asked. There was a pause. Celeste said lawyers would make it hostile. "Then I'm not going." Joanne sounded tired. "Ruby, please. People think you're doing this for money." People thought I disappeared because Celeste filed paperwork saying she couldn't find me. I didn't know about that. That's the problem. Joanne lowered her voice. "Would you come if your lawyer came?" I called Claire. She advised against treating a family meeting as a negotiation, but she agreed to attend if we made the purpose clear and brought copies rather than originals. "Originals stay secured," she said. "These copies are for discussion, not negotiation." The meeting happened at Joanne's house. When I arrived, Celeste was already seated at the dining table with Owen beside her. Her eyes were red, though I couldn't tell if she had been crying or had prepared to look like she had. Several relatives sat around the room holding coffee they were not drinking. Joanne had put out crackers, cheese, and a bowl of grapes as though snacks could make the gathering less hostile. Celeste looked at Claire. "I thought this was family only." Claire set her folder on the table. "Ruby is represented. I'm here to make sure no one misunderstands the nature of the discussion." Celeste turned to me. You couldn't even face me without a lawyer? I faced you at the memorial. You gave me $1,200 and changed the locks. You always make yourself the wounded one. I didn't come here to argue about feelings. I came with records. Owen leaned forward. Can we keep the tone respectful? Claire looked at him. That would be useful. Celeste pressed a tissue to the corner of one eye. She is digging up our parents because she wants a check, she said to the room. I stayed. I handled the hospitals, the funeral, the house, everything. Ruby came and went whenever it suited her. And now, for years later, she's trying to punish us. A cousin shifted uncomfortably. Joan looked at me. Ruby, is this really what your parents would have wanted? I had expected the question. That's exactly why I'm here, I said. I opened my folder. First, I placed a copy of the letter from my parents on the table. Then the trust summary. Then the bank confirmation showing the safe deposit box authorization. Then the access log. Then the probate filing where Celeste claimed I could not be located. Beside it, I placed the screenshot of her text from the same period. Then the locksmith receipt with Owen's name. Then the storage unit payment. Then the inventory page that omitted property listed in my parents' insurance records. Celeste stared at the documents without touching them. What is this? Joan asked. The truth, I said. Celeste's face tightened. These are fake. Claire spoke before I could. The originals are secured at the bank and in legal custody. The notarized documents have been verified. The access records came directly from the bank. The probate filings are certified copies from the court. Celeste reached toward the letter. Claire put one hand over the top copy. You may read it where it is. Celeste pulled her hand back. This is disgusting. I looked at her. You told everyone I was given charity. They left me a trust because they knew you would try exactly this. That box was estate property. No, Claire said. The bank agreement and trust documents do not support that. I was the executor. Executor authority does not automatically override a separate restricted box agreement or a trust. Celeste pointed at me. She didn't even care enough to open it for 4 years. The sentence landed differently than she intended. Joan turned toward her. You knew about the box? Celeste froze. I slid the access log across the table. She tried to open it 3 times. One cousin leaned closer. After telling us Ruby had already received everything? Owen said. We were checking for estate documents. Then why didn't you tell me it existed? I asked. No one knew what the key opened. You changed the locks the next morning. For security. I placed his voicemail transcript beside the receipt. You told me I had no reason to be there. That was Celeste. You paid the locksmith. He looked down. Celeste pushed her chair back slightly. None of this changes the fact that I took care of them. I took care of them too. You visited. I drove Dad to appointments. I organized Mom's medication. I brought groceries. I have the messages because you spent years telling people I wasn't there. Celeste's voice rose. You always kept receipts. No, I kept texts. There's a difference. Joan picked up the copy of my parents' letter. Her hand shook as she read. The room stayed quiet long enough for me to hear the refrigerator turn on in the kitchen. When she finished, Joan looked at Celeste. They wrote that they expected family pressure. Celeste scoffed. Dad was paranoid near the end. Claire's voice sharpened by a degree. The document was notarized while both parents were medically competent, and it corresponds with communications from their attorney. They were manipulated. By whom? I asked. Celeste opened her mouth, then closed it. I placed the copy of the proposed estate revision in front of her. You brought this to Mom when she was weak. Owen looked at Celeste. It was the first time during the meeting that he seemed genuinely surprised. Celeste's face went pale. That was a draft, she said. Dad found it. I was simplifying things. You were removing me. You weren't their biological child. There it was. No careful wording. No soft voice. No claim that this was about caregiving or responsibility. Just the belief underneath everything. Joan set the letter down. Celeste, she said quietly, answer her. Celeste looked around the table, perhaps expecting someone to rescue her. No one did. "What do you want me to say?" she demanded. "I was trying to protect what was mine." I nodded once. "That's the first honest thing you've said." She stood so fast her chair scraped the floor. "You think these papers make you their daughter?" "No," I said. "They prove they already did." Owen reached for her arm. She pulled away. "You are destroying this family," she said. "You don't get to call it peace when it only works if I disappear." She looked at Claire. "I'm not discussing anything else without my own attorney." Claire nodded. "That would be appropriate." The family meeting did not resolve the case. It did something Celeste had not expected, though. It ended her control of the story. After that day, relatives started asking questions they should have asked 4 years earlier. Why had Celeste claimed she could not locate me? Why had Owen moved boxes before an inventory was complete? What happened to Dad's coin collection? Why were items sold or stored before authority was clear? Why had Celeste tried repeatedly to access a box that listed me as the only successor? The court process was quieter than the family meeting and more consequential. There was no dramatic confession. No judge shouted. No one was arrested in the hallway. Claire presented the documents, the conflicting filings, the access records, the missing inventory items, and the communications. Celeste's attorney argued that she had acted under stress, relied on informal family understandings, and believed the cash represented a valid personal distribution. Claire responded that belief was not a substitute for notice, accounting, or accurate representations to the court. The judge ordered a formal accounting and suspended Celeste's authority while the review continued. A neutral estate representative was appointed to examine the remaining assets, sale records, storage unit contents, and distributions. The separate trust was confirmed as valid. The court also required Celeste and Owen to produce records for property removed from the house. Some items were recovered from storage. Some had been sold. Where the evidence showed improper handling or unaccounted value, Celeste was held financially responsible. Certain legal costs were charged against her share rather than the estate because the court found that her conduct had made the additional proceedings necessary. The result was not instant, but it was clear. Celeste lost control of the estate. She had to account for what she had treated as hers. The house was valued properly, and my documented share was recognized. The estate representative arranged a lawful resolution, rather than allowing Celeste to keep living there under the vague claim that she was protecting the family legacy. I received the trust distribution my parents intended for me, along with my legal share connected to the house and other estate assets. I also received the things that mattered more than their sale value. Mom's recipe cards were found in a plastic storage bin between old tablecloths and unopened kitchen supplies. The corners were bent, and some of the ink had faded, but her handwriting was still there. Dad's box of birthday letters was in the same storage unit. Celeste had labeled it Misk paper. The framed family photograph I had tried to collect the morning after the memorial was recovered from a stack of pictures Owen claimed he had planned to sort. I did not take everything I could have demanded. I did not want every chair, plate, or decorative object in the house. I wanted what was mine, what my parents had specifically left me, and an accurate record of what had happened. I didn't need every piece of the house. I needed the truth inside it. Joanne asked to meet me after the accounting order. We sat at a small cafe, and for the first few minutes, she kept folding and unfolding the paper wrapper from her straw. "I owe you an apology," she said. "Yes." She looked surprised that I didn't make it easier for her. "I thought I was stopping a fight," she continued. "I didn't realize I was helping one side win. You asked the person being excluded to stay quiet. That was not neutral. I know that now. You could have known it then." Her eyes filled, but she nodded. "I should have asked what happened instead of asking you to be quiet." I believed she meant it. That did not erase 4 years. "I appreciate the apology," I said. "And I'm still going to remember what your silence cost me." "I understand." We did not become instantly close after that. We rebuilt something smaller and more honest. She stopped carrying messages from Celeste. I stopped pretending that an apology required immediate trust. Some relatives apologized too. Others said I should have handled it privately. One cousin told me, "You got what you wanted. Maybe it's time to let the rest go." I asked him what exactly I was supposed to let go of. The false probate statements? The missing property? The attempt to remove me from the estate while telling everyone I had accepted my share? He said he only meant that families sometimes needed to move forward. I told him, moving forward and pretending nothing happened are not the same thing. He did not answer. Celeste sent one final message after the court confirmed the trust. "You won. I hope the money was worth losing your sister." I forwarded it to Claire and did not reply. That was the boundary I kept. No private meetings. No late-night arguments. No emotional negotiations. No conversations where my adoption could be used as a discount on my place in the family. For practical matters, communication went through lawyers or the neutral representative. When the proceedings ended, communication stopped. I still have the brass key. It no longer opens anything I need. The bank box was closed after the documents were transferred, and the trust administration was completed. But I keep the key on a small ring in the drawer where I store my parents' letters. Celeste meant the envelope to reduce me. $1,200, an old key, and a sentence designed to make me feel temporary. Instead, she handed me the path to everything she had tried to hide. She called me adopted like it was a receipt. My parents left proof that it was a promise. I didn't fight because I wanted my sister's house. I fought because she tried to bury the proof that I was their daughter too. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.